What if I told you some of the most powerful superheroes in comics could actually be easily defeated? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda. Who do you think are the most powerful superheroes out there, and do you prefer heroes that are unbeatable or inherently flawed in some way? Number 10. Spider-Man. Spider-Man is generally known for being one of the most powerful and most iconic heroes out there, but even he has his weaknesses. In fact, while many of them are not as famous as he is, some of them are pretty ridiculous, including his weakness to ethyl chloride, something that also slows and weakens spiders in the natural world. So if you were ever wondering if there might be a bug spray that you could use to fight against Spider-Man, the answer is actually kinda yes. Although make sure you bring a big spray can of ethyl chloride, as he is a lot bigger than your average spider. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you are loving what we are doing here at Top 10 Nerd, why not hit that subscribe button? It really helps us out and you get more of our content, so yay! Number 9. Superman. Superman is a character that we generally associate with strength, but not often weakness, which is interesting considering that he actually has quite a few weaknesses, probably the weirdest among them being magic. The best way to defeat Superman would simply be to become a magic user, because against them he becomes kinda powerless. When it comes to the explanation for why, a lot of people's theories surrounding this have to do with the fact that Superman's powers are naturally occurring, not magic based themselves, although this is usually used as a means to weaken him in the comics, as he doesn't have a natural means to defend against magic, and it's one of the few things like kryptonite that his invulnerability does not protect him from. In fact, narratively speaking, this is likely why he was made weak to magic to begin with, to help give him more to struggle against as a character, as he's kinda OP usually. Number 8. Rogue. Rogue was one of my favorite characters growing up, and I think what I loved about her so much was the tragedy of her story and her powers. But what's even more, I love the way that Rogue overcame them. Still, this would be a terrible weakness to have, or have had, so that's why I'm including Rogue on our list. Rogue's powers allow her to adopt the powers of whoever she comes into physical contact with, actually taking their powers for herself, basically draining them. But that's not all Rogue takes with her touch. She can also take your memories and drain your life force. Or at least, you know, she could do that. Rogue has since overcome this weakness by facing her fears. As it turns out, it was her own subconscious that was basically making it manifest. Number 7. Wonder Woman. One of Wonder Woman's original weaknesses seems to be in line with what she represents as a character: female power and strength. As an Amazon, Wonder Woman was initially also susceptible to losing her strength and power if she was ever restrained by a man. While some might see this as kind of a sexist weakness in the comics, I would actually see it as kind of being the opposite. To me, it's more meant to symbolize a history of oppression against women and its consequences. At least that's how I see that weakness. However, regardless of any greater meaning behind it, it was also a pretty silly weakness in the sense that it made Wonder Woman fairly easy to defeat under certain circumstances, and you know, if she was going up against men, because if they just found her bracelets, that's kinda it. So I do have to say I'm glad this is no longer a rule for her in the comics today. Number 6. Nightcrawler. Well, Nightcrawler is a super powerful character overall, and an iconic and amazing character as well. He isn't actually the most powerful teleporter. This has to do with his weird restrictions and weaknesses surrounding teleportation. The big one being that he can only teleport by a max distance of about, I believe, 2 miles at a time. The other main one being the more that he teleports, the more exhausted he gets, and Kurt as a teleporter can tire fairly quickly if he's forced to make multiple jumps, which if he has to go far, he kind of has to do because each jump he can only go so far. Kurt does teleport through the Brimstone dimension, which I saw some people in the comics bringing up as like a super powerful thing, but this is actually more how his teleportation skills work. It's not necessarily something he's choosing to do, as he has to travel through the Brimstone dimension to get where he's going. So while yes, he can travel interdimensionally, it's only one dimension, and it's not really by choice, it's more by design. However, Kurt is an amazing character because of his limitations. That's what makes him so great. It means that when Kurt has to push it to save the day, and he often of course does just that because he really is a hero, he's often putting his life on the line for ideals he believes in, or for all of Earth or all of life itself, whatever he's defending. That's why we love Kurt. Number 5. Green Lantern. Hal Jordan is Green Lantern, or one of the Green Lanterns anyways, and as a Green Lantern he has a pretty iconic and ridiculous weakness. Or at least for a very long time in the comics he did have that weakness. Hal had a weakness to the color yellow. In fact, all Green Lanterns did for a while. This was as a result of parallax existing within the Green Lantern Corps' central battery. Having the entity of fear within the battery caused all Green Lanterns to develop a weakness to yellow, something that was used in All-Star Batman and Robin and Frank Miller's alternate reality to weaken and torment Hal Jordan's Green Lantern. In the All-Star Batman and Robin comic, Batman and Robin basically paint themselves and an entire safe house yellow, just to teach Hal a lesson about meddling in Batman's affairs. Number 4. Black Cat. Black Cat is an anti-hero over at Marvel Comics, who is generally known for being an ally and sometimes romantic partner of Spider-Man. While she typically is shown as being a skilled thief with acrobatic skills and superb training and experience as a fighter, at least that's how she was depicted initially, she doesn't usually have any superpowers to speak of. However, at one point she did just have straight up powers, and this happened for Black Cat when the Kingpin granted her wish of getting them. However, because this was the Kingpin, it of course did not work out exactly as Felicia had planned. She ended up with bad luck powers, which were extremely useful when fighting an enemy, but not so useful when with an ally or anyone else, as they actually affected not just her opponents, but like anyone who was close to her, which means that Peter suffered from them as well. To make matters worse, Felicia kept her powers a secret from him, which ended up driving a wedge between the two when it came to their romantic and working relationships with one another. Number 3. Green Lantern. Alan Scott used to have a hilarious weakness, similar to someone else on our list actually. Let me know in the comments when and if you figure out who I'm talking about here. Alan Scott had a weakness to wood. The explanation for why and how this weakness developed was explained later by the fact that Alan was snuck up on and basically attacked using a wooden club, sort of, and as a result he subconsciously manifested this as a weakness of his, due to him mistaking it for one when in reality, you know, it just hurts to get smacked by a piece of wood, because that just hurts. Thankfully, Alan Scott has overcome this, and this strange weakness that was actually originally tied to being the hero Green Lantern in the comics no longer bothers Alan, or any other Green Lanterns for that matter. Number 2. Isca The Unbeaten. Isca is a super interesting character. On one hand, she is extremely powerful and can never lose. She can even potentially have her power utilized to manipulate the stakes of other competitions that she's pulled into. However, this also implies that there are times when she has zero control over her powers, in the sense that she cannot influence the result of an unbalanced battle. In fact, her powers will pull her to serve the side that will be victorious, regardless of whether or not she wants to, in terms of what her mind or her heart is saying to her. This has meant that Isca has been forced to turn her back on her own people, the mutants of Arakko, more than once. She has also had to fight against family, colleagues, and friends before as a result. Although the one thing she can control at times is kind of how she approaches the fighting part of, you know, the battle. Meaning that if she has the option, you know, she can try to fight others involved as opposed to those that she is specifically close to. Like during her fight against planet Arakko and the Great Ring, when she was teleported away to the planet's ocean by Nightcrawler and chose to stay there fighting the planet's creatures in the name of Uranos and the Eternals, as opposed to fighting her own people directly, or continuing to fight them directly. Number 1. Power Girl. Power Girl probably has one of the weirdest weaknesses around. Despite being a Kryptonian who is on the level of Superman when it comes to her powers and her strength, she can easily be harmed simply if you use organic materials to hurt her. You know that saying about sticks and stones, which may break your bones? Well, for Power Girl, despite having super durability and invulnerability, this is true. Sticks and stones could break her bones, but industrial steel probably wouldn't hurt her for some reason. Raw organic materials, which have been unprocessed, are revealed to be a weakness of Power Girl's in Supergirl issue number 16 from the 1996 series. Power Girl shares this revelation with her alternate self from the main continuity at the time, who was shocked by the revelation. Which, I mean, fair enough, I would be too if I were Linda Danvers, who was Supergirl at that time. However, I will say I don't think that Kara has this weakness anymore in the comics, thank goodness, but in the 90s, it was a thing, and it was there for some reason. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm your host Amanda, reminding you till next time to stay nerdy, YouTube. Bye!